Thank you, Joanna. It's a lovely way to enter into this day, into this third Sunday of Advent. One more week to go before our Christmas service. It seems hard to believe. I don't know about any of you, but to me, Christmas somehow seems as if it's more distant this year. And I think it's because we're not able to share in all of the celebration that we typically do. It's a different kind of Christmas for us this year. But it's important for us to remember what it's really all about, and to see how everything fits within the lives that we're living today during this pandemic, this time when we're perhaps feeling really locked down, locked in, and to look at what the gifts might be of that. And so my topic today is what gifts do I bring, or what gifts can we bring? And so I go back to the original story. I sort of feel like it should begin with long ago and far away, because certainly it was long ago and far away. But the story of the nativity, the birth of a baby in very humble surroundings, in a stable where the baby is laid in a manger. And as I was thinking about that this week, I thought, manger. If you look at that word as a French word, it means manger means to eat. And of course, the manger in which the baby was laid was a trough where the animals ate. The most humble of beginnings in the story that has been created around the nativity. And there were, as the story goes, there were shepherds out in the field keeping watch over their flocks by night, and angels came to them. And angels told them about the birth of a king, the King of Kings, the Messiah, and that they would find this baby wrapped in the famous swaddling clothes, lying in a manger, and that there would be peace on earth as a result of the birth of this child. And so the shepherds went to worship him. And then another part of the story is, of course, the three kings who came from the Orient, called the three wise men, sometimes called the three astrologers. It depends upon what version of the story that you're reading. And they brought gifts. And so I was thinking of that, and I thought, I wonder, is this the beginning of gift giving? Was this story the beginning of when humanity thought that it was time to exchange gifts with one another? And did a little bit of probing into that, but I also considered the gifts that the three wise men brought with them: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold itself is a symbol of divinity. I mean, if you think about the many amazing churches that have been built in developing countries, and there is pure gold everywhere around them, no matter how impoverished the people might be. And the Ark of the Covenant was covered with gold. Gold has always been something that has been used in pagan ceremonies. But basically, the meaning of gold is divinity. It's interesting, though, to consider that when the wise men came to visit the baby Jesus, they had stopped to see Herod the king beforehand. And so by the time they arrived to see the baby, they knew that the baby was in danger, because Herod had heard about the birth of the Messiah, and he wanted to kill all infants under the age of 2 so that he would not be threatened, his throne would not be threatened, because he did not understand the meaning of the Messiah. And so the wise men brought with them a warning to Mary and Joseph that they needed to take the baby and flee to Egypt. And so if you think about it, gold could be a very useful commodity at that point, because it would enable them to travel and to procure what they needed along the way. So, kind of an interesting thing to contemplate. Frankincense comes from a tree, and slits are put in a tree, and this white resin comes out of the tree. And it's very fragrant, and it has been used for centuries for special celebrations and for religious services because of the fragrance. But it is also an essential oil that is in use today for various ailments that people might have. But the symbolic meaning of frankincense is about holiness. It's about this baby whose life is completely in alignment with God, or will be completely in alignment with God, which he will become the Christ. So it's about holiness. Myrrh is the thing that was puzzling to me, because myrrh also is extracted from a tree in the same way that frankincense is. Myrrh is very, very bitter. And in centuries past, it was put into wine to kind of stupefy people. I mean, if we could look at what that means today, it would mean if you were about to have surgery, or a tooth extracted or something, some myrrh put into the wine, if you drank it, would kind of numb the senses, so that you would be able to do that. And I thought, what a strange gift that is, to bring to a baby. And then as I looked at all of them, at each of the gifts, the gold, the frankincense, and myrrh, I thought it's almost like those gifts were to foretell the future of the baby. And, a life, with richness of spirit, a holy life, but also one that has a very tragic ending, if we are to believe the biblical stories. So this amazing story was put together, and it has become part of our culture for centuries. And that began in 330 BC, when Constantine held the Council of Nicaea. And he declared that December 25th would be the birthday of Christ. So, we don't know whether there was a Christ child born on the 25th of December or not, or we don't know the date, although astrologers or astronomers have said that that there were configurations of stars at the time that might make it appear that a star was standing still, even though scientifically we know that that is not possible, and that would mean that the birth of Christ was in April rather than in December. But Constantine said no, December 25th. And the reason for that is that the Romans had a celebration at that point, of a celebration of the sun, what they called the unconquered sun, because days started to become longer around that time of year, and there was more light during the days. It was gradually growing. And so they celebrated that. But there was also another celebration called Saturnalia. And that was a big feast, and gifts were given during that time. And so all of those things were wrapped up together into Christmas. And Christianity was declared at that time to be the official religion of Rome. So there are many hidden meanings in all of these things. And I was thinking about how we celebrate Christmas, and the kinds of things that we do, and where those customs come from. And, of course, the Christmas tree, we know that came from Germany. And it was in the 16th century. Someone found a fir tree growing out of a fallen oak, and took that tree and put lights on it, would have been candles at the time, and said that because it was triangular, it represented the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, we give meanings to things throughout the ages, and those things, we perhaps forget about the meanings of them, but we celebrate them today. We have Christmas trees in our homes. Some people decorate trees outside, and so on. And so basically, there's a whole group of stories that are woven together to become what we celebrate at Christmas time. And, there's a lot of doubt about the nativity story. They're a bit difficult to believe a virgin birth. Difficult to really believe that a baby was born in a stable. I guess everything is possible. But the thing is that the story has created in us a feeling, a kind of faith in something greater than we typically are, something that we want to feel in our hearts, the love and the compassion that comes to us this time of year, that seems to be stronger than any other time of year, and makes up exactly what it is that makes our Christmases, makes this season holy to us, and makes it a time that we have so much more love. Something seems to be awakened in us that is stronger this time of year than it is the rest of the year. And so what we need to remember is that while the nativity story is about the baby Jesus, it is also about each one of us. You know, we were each born with this possibility within us. This is something in our teaching that we really understand, that this God stuff, this spirit is in each and every one of us. And the Christ is there within us. We're born with it. It just needs to be awakened. And so our journey is a journey of awakening, a journey into the light, a journey of, of a different way of living our lives. As I said last week, when I was talking about the miracle of the oil and how, the oil had to be, or the olives had to be crushed down, pummeled, for that oil to come out of them, and then the oil to rise to the top. I think perhaps that's also kind of symbolic of a story that has the birth of Christ in it, in very humble surroundings. There is that humbling, so that one can rise to the top. And I think that is evident in this story as well. And so it's the awakening of the Christ consciousness that is the virgin birth. We are impregnated with spirit at birth. And that is something, for me anyway, that is easier to accept. Again, knowing that it is always there. And it means that we don't look outside ourselves for power. That power is always there within us. We don't look to external things to make us happy. That happiness is within us. We don't look externally for love, because that love is within us. And yet somehow we get lost in this, in the feelings. We tend to be looking outside to be validated, to be happy, for other things and other people to make us happy, when it is all there inside ourselves. And when we are prepared to live in that place of being with spirit, sitting with spirit, listening to spirit, we come to recognize that that power is within us to create those things in our lives, that we don't need to get them from anywhere else, that it is all there. And as we ourselves claim them for ourselves, we're claiming them for all humanity. As Dr. Holmes said, Jesus was the example of who we could all be, not the exception. He was the way shower. He came to show us the way, to show us how to live a life of love and forgiveness and healing and compassion, and even through suffering to forgive, and even through suffering to express love. And so these are the things that we need to remember. Are we prepared to rise above? Are we prepared to work more and more to become closer to the example, closer to who Jesus became? Very often in years past, I would ask myself, in these circumstances, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus say? And if you do that and you go into the silence, you can find the answer to just about everything in your life. It's a matter of taking the time. And we tend to run away from those things. If we're going through struggles, we tend to not sit and go into our hearts, because we have concern that we're going to hurt more, or things are going to get worse if we really face them, when in fact that's where the answers are, in the silence. And that's where we find our salvation, for want of a better word. That's where we find something that saves us from the horrible things that do happen to us in our lives. And we're going through some pretty challenging times right now. I've talked to a lot of older people in recent days, and they've talked about how this time around it's much more difficult for them. It's more difficult because they have to they have a long winter ahead of them, where it wasn't until March last year that we basically were shut down. So let us pray that by January 8th, that everything has shifted, that this virus has leveled out, and that we can begin to be together again. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we have all of the resources within to keep us strong and to keep us healthy and to keep us in a state of happiness and joy. And looking at the birth of Christ again, we have to remember that Jesus did not come here to die for us. You know, we hear that expression so often. It's been part of the biblical teachings through the centuries. He didn't come to die for us. He came to teach us how to live our lives and how to live them abundantly. That's a quote of Ernest Holmes. He came to teach us how to live our lives and to live them abundantly. That doesn't just mean to have a lot of money. That means abundance in every area of our lives. It means to have loving friends and family. It means to do the work that fulfills us, to do things that really give us purpose on this planet, and to be satisfied by those things. And in us all, it is a time for rebirthing, remembering this and rebirthing ourselves, and taking those messages and cleaving them to our hearts and owning them and allowing ourselves to go forward, because it is a journey forward, step by step, as we grow closer and closer to the light, and as we become more Christ-like in our consciousness. And so, as we celebrate this time of year with joyful giving, I'm reminded also of the words of Ernest Holmes, who said that the gifts that we give should be extensions of ourselves. So what kind of gift would we like to give that is an extension of ourselves? I suspect that, that in days ahead, maybe only weeks ahead, but I suspect that a little bit farther along, there will be a book that comes out that's called Life in the Time of COVID. And it's going to have stories about all of the heroes who were the frontline workers. It's going to have stories about people who died. It's going to have stories about those who survived. It's going to have stories about those who have permanent damage to their health as a result of COVID. It's going to have stories about people who reached out and did wonderful things to help others. And what will happen, of course, is the stories will grow and grow, and until there's a whole myth that is woven around COVID, in the same way that there's a myth that has been woven around the birth of Christ. The stories always gain something. If I tell you a story, you tell me a story, the next time I pass it along, I'm not going to remember it all, and I might embellish it along the way. So we can know that the stories are going to be embellished. But I think what the important thing is going to be is for us to look at the kind of subtitle of what that book might be. And it would be the gifts that were given to us and the gifts that we were able to give during this time. And what gifts are more important at this time than to give gifts of love and gifts of compassion, gifts of understanding to others, of being in touch with them. I don't think there is anything more important during this time than for us to be on the phone with friends, with relatives, with those who are dear to us, and reaching out to some of those that we don't know so well. And we have all of the technology today to do these things. Here we are together today on Zoom, and we can see one another, we can talk to one another, and it's such a blessing. So to be able to get together with friends and family on Zoom so that we have that closer connection is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. And writing letters to those you love and letting them know how important they are to you. It's so wonderful to get a letter in the mail, in the actual mail, snail mail as we've learned to call it, something that we can hang on to, something that we can read over and over again. Christmas cards that have almost become extinct in recent years because of the technology, and also, I recognize because of the expense of stamps and of cards themselves. But perhaps this time of year, people might have more money than they've had in the past. I know that some are suffering from lack, but I heard on the radio, I think it was just yesterday, perhaps the day before, that Canadians have more wealth right now than they've ever had in their lives before. I believe it was $1.5 billion more in total that Canadians have than they've had before COVID. And part of that is because they don't go anywhere to spend their money. And I thought, that's an interesting thing. And I thought, well, if that's the case, then perhaps we can buy Christmas cards this year. Perhaps we can buy stamps. Perhaps we can let people know that we're thinking of them. I think that would mean so much to people to get those cards in the mail. And it's time consuming. Not everybody has the time to do it this time of year, but certainly we have more time, most of us, than we've ever had before, because we're not out there running around through a lot of stores and, doing a lot of shopping. We're not getting together with all of our friends to celebrate. I may have mentioned before that I have a couple of friends who say that they have happy hour every day at 5 p.m. They live in the eastern United States. And every day at 5 o'clock, they pour themselves a glass of wine, they come on Zoom, and they talk to one another, and they celebrate together. We can be very creative and very innovative during these times. We are creative beings. And that's something that we need to remember. The holidays are a time for spiritual preparation, if we allow them to be. We have time. We have more time where we are shut in these days. And so it's important for us not to run from that preparation, but instead to really think deeply about what it means to us, to think deeply about what that love means to us, about what it would mean to have peace on earth, about what our roles might be to have peace on this planet. That's what we need to be thinking about, because those are the gifts of spirit. And those are the gifts that we truly, truly can give to one another this year. We all love special gifts. I don't think there's anything more important, though, than the gifts that we give of ourselves to others. And some of those are spontaneous gifts, and some of them are meaningful in terms of helping others. I was walking down the street the other day, and there was someone from the Salvation Army with a kettle and ringing bells, and darned if there wasn't a tap here on the side of on the side of the kettle, where if you tapped your credit card or your debit card, you could make a $5 donation. And it just tickled my fancy to be able to do that. And I walked away with a big smile on my face thinking, I'm so grateful for the technology that allows us to do these things, because not a lot of us carry cash around with us anymore. So it's a spontaneous act of giving, but there are other spontaneous acts that we can do, again, with phone calls, with letters, and with emails to people. We often receive letters from people that talk about everything they've done during the year and all their children have done and all their grandchildren have done and so on. But I think a simple message, if I'm thinking about you, I love you, you're always in my thoughts, you're always in my prayers, is something that is so much more important, and something that we can all do, whether it's by snail mail or by email. It's an appreciated thing to express ourselves, express our true feelings to one another, instead of holding back. That puts more of a Merry Christmas, I think, than just about anything else. The best gifts of all come from what we've learned about love and compassion, and bring us good cheer. I think it was last year I read something that at Christmas, truly it's measurable that there is more love that we give out. There's something that opens up in our hearts at Christmas time, and we are more loving, we are more compassionate, and we share more of that, and it creates an energy vortex of love that envelops more and more people. And as I thought about that again yesterday, I was thinking, the greatest gift of all that we can give is love for humanity, is forgiveness, is standing in the shoes of another person and just loving them for who they are, loving them for the God stuff that is within them, for the expression of love that they are capable of being. And if we do that all year round, if we can keep that energy vortex going, we can change the earth. We can change everything in it, and we can know peace on earth. Something to strive for in memory of a story from long ago. I think that's the greatest gift of all that we can give. And so it is.